Minister and members of the panel. We're just waiting to ensure that the final social media is up before we fully begin.
Prime Minister, we want you to, when we give you the cue, to welcome persons on social media, and you can also introduce your colleagues, and then we will go into introducing, not introducing, but telling people what is the situation here with persons from the universities and so forth, and then we'll just go straight into the questions. We'll last for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes.
So we'll take questions from the floor here from some of our young people. You would have known, Prime Minister, some of the Jamaica House Fellows are here, as well as those from the universities, both UTEC and UWI. I see an engineering major. No, look at him. All right. Urban planning background and communication, economics. Those are the backgrounds of some of the young people who are here today. Whenever you are. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2018 Media Day Town Hall. We have the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Minister of Science, Technology and Energy, Dr. Andrew Wheatley, and Member of Parliament, Dr. Nigel Clark, who is also Ambassador Plenipotentiary and also an advisor to the Prime Minister. I now turn over to the Prime Minister, who will give us an opening introduction.
Good afternoon and welcome to Jamaica House and our first virtual town hall for the year. I was just commenting earlier that in the digital world, this is what town halls will be like. Of course, I'm a native to social media, but I also remember the days of the actual town halls, where some of the challenges you face.
All right, thank you so much, Prime Minister. Well, good afternoon once again to all those in our virtual land and to those who are here for our town hall following your budget presentation yesterday, Prime Minister. Certainly, many persons have questions. Before we get into the questions, you know, most people on the social media pages are shouting out from Florida, New York, Barbados, New Jersey, Kingston, and several other places. So Toronto as well saying hello. So before we get the first question from our social media representatives, can you give us an overview then, sir, of your budget presentation yesterday and an opening remark, so to speak?
My budget presentation yesterday had two objectives. The first objective was to show government in action, a government that is not just making announcements, making promises, and coming up with plans, but a government that is implementing, a government that is having results, good results, and a government that is taking action, simple actions that can have a significant effect on the lives of people, but a government that is also willing to take brave action that could profoundly and fundamentally change for the better the lives of people. And that was the first half of the presentation. And I went through actions that we're taking on simple matters such as the use of solar lamps to replace open flame light sources, a consensus that we have managed to reach on a strategy for collecting plastic bottles, action that we have taken on land titling, on housing, action that we are taking in creating employment, in building our ports and logistics, action that we are taking in tourism as well. So I think we'd achieved the objective in that half of the speech. The second half of the speech was about setting the record straight. And it's absolutely important that we do this because Jamaica's problems didn't start yesterday. It didn't start in 2011. I think we would have to look at a turning point of our challenges starting somewhere at around 1996, thereabout. Some of the people who are going to be participating in this town hall or who listened to my presentation in Parliament yesterday were not born yet, or were just born, or were not at a point where they could understand and appreciate how that history has an impact on their present life. And so I thought I would take up some of the time in my presentation in really setting the record straight, but to also make a call for both political parties to elevate some national issues, such as our economic growth and job creation priorities, and priorities on national security above politics. And I believe the country is saying the same thing, and I'm hopeful that we can reach some consensus on these matters.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Well, our audience is absolutely growing. I'll give you the figures shortly. Again, the Bahamas has joined on, so too Dubai, Alberta in Saskatchewan in Canada, and several others as well, including those from Southwest St. Elizabeth. All right, enough of the shout out to all those who are on social media at this point. Let's get some questions on. I'll be assisted, Prime Minister, by my colleague, Robert Morgan, who will be taking questions from Twitter. I'll do Facebook, and we'll get some from Instagram as well coming on. So let's start with Twitter. We're using the hashtag Action2018. Action 2018.
Prime Minister, Alicia Bethune at Alicia's Faith on Twitter says, I know you didn't get to share the full presentation, but I am not hearing much about the plans to safeguard agriculture. While we try to diversify our industries, we still need to protect the ones that our economy is still hinged on.
You know, very good observation. For practical purposes, I had to cut my presentation. You know, the days of 3.5, 4-hour budget speeches, those days are gone. Unfortunately, my presentation was still a little bit too long. I acknowledge that, but by virtue of the topics that we had to cover, I decided that I would use up the time. The Minister of Agriculture will have a substantial presentation to make in the sectoral debate, so I would encourage you to listen. I'm agreeing with you that agriculture is so important to our national economic strategy. The truth is that the fastest way to grow our economy is to grow the agricultural sector. And indeed, one of the reasons why we have not met the projected growth target for the present fiscal year is that agriculture did not perform as expected. Much of that is due to exogenous shocks. I'm certain that you will recall that twice in this fiscal year we had major weather events that resulted in flooding and great dislocation of the agricultural sector. But having said that, that is no excuse. The real challenge with agriculture is resilience. And so the government is now focusing on how we can build resilience in agriculture. And that is something that I have given directions to the Minister of Agriculture to do the necessary work and develop the necessary policies around. Dr. Clark, I know you have, through the Economic Growth Council, been talking to the farmers. You want to tell the world, literally, what it is that you have come up with from the Economic Growth Council.
Yeah. Thank you, Prime Minister. Agriculture, as the questioner highlighted, is crucially important to Jamaica and crucially important to our economic growth and to employment. There are thousands of people who work in agriculture, and we have fertile soil, we have sunshine, and we have rain. We need to be more organized in the way in which agriculture is pursued. And one of the areas that the farmers speak about, when I speak about farmers, I'm talking about out of traditional banana and sugar, is the fact that we don't have enough storage for agricultural product. And as a result of that, farmers are left to the vagaries of significant price fluctuations, because if there's too much that's produced, it can't be stored for times of little. And so prices collapse and produce goes to waste. On the contrary, when there is a drought, items are not available, prices go up, and people rush into production. That kind of scenario lends itself to the agricultural sector being perceived as highly risky. And when something is highly risky, it means that few people enter and the price of entry becomes extremely high. One of the things that the government is looking to do out of a suggestion that came out of the EGC is to incentivize, or to actually do it itself, the installation or the production of storage facilities that can be used cooperatively by farmers, that excess product can be stored. And some of this may have to be cold storage because of the nature of some of the products. And that would even out the fluctuations in supply, allowing for more stable prices, reducing the risk premium, and making it attractive to farmers to enter. Also, PM, Jamaica has a pre-clearance facility arrangement with the United States. The United States is the largest market for agricultural products in our hemisphere. They import $4.5 billion of vegetables from Mexico. They import about 40 or 50 million dollars of vegetables from the Dominican Republic. In Jamaica, we are doing about 19 million. And there's significant scope for increase. The pre-clearance facility, what it allows for is produce that is made in Jamaica goes to the pre-clearance facility here in Jamaica where it's inspected, and that allows for faster entry into the United States. One of the things that is just a fact that that pre-clearance facility is not used very much. And one of the reasons for it is that the way in which production is organized in in silos, the coordination doesn't exist. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is to, or we're, from an EGC point of view, recommending to the government to do is to ensure that there's greater coordination, that we can make use of the infrastructure we have here and work backwards. Sometimes we just want to produce what we're comfortable producing. The way to do it in the 21st century is to look, and the statistics are available, look at the market, look at where the opportunities are, and then produce for those opportunities.
Ambassador, thank you so much. So we're getting to Minister Wheatley shortly because I do see a question about digitization. Before we do that, let me just apologize for the absence of Minister Favour Williams. You would know that today is the closing of the budget debate, and her minister, once again, it will close Minister Shaw, so she had to go back to the ministry and then to Parliament, which starts at 2, to be able to assist in that process. Let me just take a quick one from Facebook, and then we'll have one of the young persons in the audience ask a question. From Facebook, Karen Rayson says, what are you doing in smaller towns like Alligator Pond to help drive commerce? The people need jobs, roads, so we're talking about jobs and infrastructure, and fishermen continue to struggle.
A very good question, and I'll interpret that to mean, what are we doing about our rural townships, and what are we doing about urbanization and ensuring that our infrastructure is up to scratch? We have articulated a policy where we are selecting some urban towns for upgrading. You would have heard about what we intend to do in Morant Bay. what we're going to be doing, which I announced yesterday in Parliament in Falmouth. There are other plans for Ocho Rios and Negril. And essentially, what we have found in examining these rural townships is that they have outgrown the physical infrastructure and planning that was initially laid for them. So there is very little that can be done within those towns. And that what we have to do is literally build in proximity to those towns new town centers, purpose-built, well-planned for smart city, green technology, and for easy access and traffic. And that we have 3 projects now on stream to do that. The project in Morant Bay will take on 25 acres of land which was previously occupied by the old Goodyear factory. And plans are already afoot that is being marshaled by the Factories Corporation of Jamaica. The design is done. Everything is done. They are at the point now of developing a joint venture with a major international company to actually build out the new town center. In Falmouth, we have identified 50 acres, and I've actually now seen the plans that are being drawn up by the Port Authority in developing the new town center. We are looking at Negril as to what can be done to improve that town. We are looking at Port Antonio. We're looking at Ocho Rios. Right, now, for the South Coast, there are plans as well. I don't want to talk too much about those plans until they're at a point where I can make them public.
Prime Minister, there's an issue which you spoke about in your recent interviews today at Media Day, which is dominating social media, and I think a lot of persons would not forgive us if we do not ask you the question. Persons want to hear your thoughts on Mr. Spencer's comments. I don't know if you'd like to address this to the young people on social media.
I think it's absolutely important that it be addressed. The policy of this government, and certainly what I stand for, is that public resources, taxpayers' money, should never be distributed on partisan political consideration. And that directive has been given to the cabinet. I will reinforce that to all the ministers and to all the other operatives of the government, that the distribution of welfare should never be done on political consideration. I think more has to be done to strengthen that and to protect the government's resources from that kind of allocative process. I will go further to say that it is almost an expectation of some supporters of the political party that they have an entitlement to government resources. It is an unfortunate feature of our culture, whether it is in the JLP or in the PNP. I think I should use this platform to appeal to party supporters that they should not have these expectations and make such demands. And I think that our political culture is evolving where most of our supporters understand that the government that they elect cannot then turn around and distribute welfare benefits or any benefits on a political basis. That we elect the government to help all Jamaicans, not just some Jamaicans. So it is quite an unfortunate statement. I have not had a chance to sit with Minister Spencer and discuss this issue as yet, but I have seen where he has said that it was not his intention, and he has apologized. And I think as Prime Minister, I probably will have to do something else, something more to reinforce the point, because I believe that it could erode confidence in the government if it is not addressed in a strong way.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Again, for the young people here, we can entertain your questions. Let me just go quickly back to Facebook. There are so many coming in very, very fast. One person had asked earlier, before I forget, the issue of how will the digital economy work and the plan for digitizing several of the documents in government. A young person wanted to know. So, Minister?
Thank you very much for that very important question. As you know, we are committed as a government to building out a truly digital
Minister,
society.
could you hold the mic up a little bit for me, please? Thank you.
You know, we are committed as a government to building out a truly digital society. And we have embarked on a number of initiatives geared towards achieving that objective. Just recently, we started a program, Top 1000 Technology Advancement Program, that seeks to train and employ some 1,000 young persons between the ages of 18 to 35, where they'll be trained in ICT. And in that process, they will also contribute to nation building through the digitization of government documents. And so, as part of that program, they will also get certification from the Caribbean Maritime University. So it is a holistic approach that we are taking here as relates to creating that knowledge-based society, as relates to creating employment opportunities and giving our young people real work experience, and also giving them the necessary certification. So that is as relates to building out that knowledge-based society. Now, the digital economy is critical for Jamaica to actually remain relevant in today's world. ICT is a critical pillar for economic growth and development, and as such, we have embarked on a number of initiatives geared towards that. You will have seen where the government itself, we have moved to a more inclusive approach as relates to communicating with our citizens. In fact, all government websites are now zero-rated, all 256 government websites. And what that simply means, there's no cost to communicate with your government online. So all 256 government websites are zero-rated.
Well, what does that mean, Minister?
It means, and I'm going to interpret it in layman terms, that if you don't have any credit on your phone or any of your device, once you're connected to the internet, you can have access. And if you should have a data plan, a paid-up data plan, then you will not be charged. So it is at no cost to you to communicate with your government online. So you can go online, you can start the process of paying your taxes, applying for a passport, or go to the Ministry of Education's website to access educational material. And so that Prime Minister is really a zero.
So to be clear, so if I have a plan, a data plan on my phone, so I have access to the internet, if I go onto, let's say, any government website where there is an archive of documents, and I download a document, I won't be charged.
You will not be charged. You will not be charged. As relates to the development of a digital economy, you're seeing where a number of financial institutions are moving in that direction. Just yesterday, I visited the NCB's Agile Lab, where they are developing quite a number of applications that seeks to engage our citizens through online services. They have developed mobile apps for banking. In fact, we are seeing where you, in another couple of months, be able to purchase a motor vehicle from a dealer, and of course, being able to get through all the process, loan application, you drive out with the vehicle in a matter of maybe 30 to 45 minutes. That's where we're going. And that, of course, will need for the government to be able to participate in that digital society, because you know you will have to get your license, your license plate, just like in the United States. So we are moving to a truly digital society, and the digital economy is critical. In fact, we are now looking to encourage our citizens to be more innovators of technology rather than just being mere consumers. And we have a number of initiatives geared towards that. We have animation program, Prime Minister, that is now in the Office of the Prime Minister, the YEDI program that seeks to develop that capacity in our young people. So Jamaica is on pace as relates to the rest of the world in terms of building out a digital economy.
So, Minister, I just wanted to take the privilege of asking you a follow-up, because a lot of the times we say we have initiatives on the way, but several questions, how do we become a part of that?
Well, the top 1,000 program, the deadline has passed as it relates to that, because we are actually doing training now. Over the last 3 weeks, we have been training young people throughout the country. So, for example,
where do they go to sign up, to register, to be part of these?
Well, the Top 1,000 program is a program that is run through the Universal Service Fund. So applications were available online. In fact, the level of interest far exceeded the number of applications. The number of persons we could have accommodate. In fact, next year we anticipate to double the number of persons to 2,000 persons in the Technology Advancement Program. So a number of persons, in fact, when we launched the program, we got over 700 online applications alone. We have dispersed a number through the members of Parliament. And, you know, it's quite encouraging, because when we had the launch at the indoor sports complex, the level of support and enthusiasm was quite overwhelming. And it speaks volumes to where we are going as a government, and that we actually have our fingers on top as it relates to the pulse of the people and what the citizens are looking for.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a question from Anthony Henry on Twitter. He says, when will we see more attention given to St. Thomas? St. Thomas has maximum potential to play a major role in the development of the shipping and logistics industry, and also heritage tourism.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there is a plan for Morant Bay, which is
Prime Minister, we're not hearing you.
Sorry, yeah, but there's a plan for Morant Bay which is well advanced, well publicized. There is a South Coast Road Improvement Project, again, that is well underway and should start this year. There are considerations for housing projects in St. Thomas to support the development of the new town center. And I have given a direction to the Port Authority to examine the possibility of developing a port in St. Thomas that will complement the great potential that exists in St. Thomas for the development of aggregates and limestone. So there are quite a bit of projects slated for St. Thomas.
Thank you.
Prime Minister. We are now interested in taking some questions from members of the audience. We have a good representative sample of people from young entrepreneurs. We have our Jamaica House fellows here. We have persons from the universities. So we want, just by a show of hands, those who wish to ask the panel a question.
All right.
I see Mr. Gordon Swaby from Edufocal.
That could be a digital question, right? All right.
Could you stand for us, Mr. Swaby?
Afternoon, everybody. Prime Minister, ministers. My question is actually directed at Dr. Clark. It's not particularly my field, so I'm not really off with it, so I'm asking it from a layman's perspective. You mentioned storage as a challenge for many farmers. So that's a gap, which essentially means that it's an opportunity. The question is, an opportunity for who? In my estimation, I think that it would be a great opportunity for medium and large entities to support small farmers in terms of facilitating storage space by renting sections of their facilities to farmers with the support of the GOJ. What hindrances, if any, are there in making this a reality? So thinking about companies like Caribbean Broilers, Rainforest Seafoods, why can't they rent their facilities with the support of the GOJ to small farmers?
Thank you, Gordon. I like the way you're thinking. That's exactly right. A market-based solution would be the ideal approach. The problem sometimes is that markets don't necessarily work efficiently, and we believe that is when and only when government steps in. So this is, here's an example of a service that farmers definitely need when you speak to them, and could benefit from. And therefore, there should be a profit opportunity. The question is, why is that not happening? Why isn't someone seeing that as an opportunity and going after it? It fits the definition of what we would describe as a market failure. And having recognized a market failure, the government steps in. And there are different ways you can approach the solution of a market failure. One way is for the government itself to provide the service, or another way is for the government to incentivize the provision of the service by the private sector, or further down the spectrum, just to use moral suasion to do that. I would think that a government that is constrained in terms of resources, it wouldn't make sense for the government to take its capital to put storage facilities in place. The idea would be to do one of the two I just mentioned, either to incentivize it happening or through moral suasion to get private sector actors to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. One more from the audience.
We
and
have
then
another question on this side.
Let's go on that side.
Where you had your hand up. Could you stand and identify yourself, please?
So, Mr. Prime Minister, everyone else here, pleasant afternoon. I am Rasheen Harris, intern in the Office of the Prime Minister, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Division to be specific. And I am from Spanish Town. And yes, I have been seeing the soldiers and I have been seeing the police. I have been of the belief that the government, the present one and even previous administrations have treated the crime problem in Jamaica from a symptom point of view or from a symptom level. And here's the reason why I said that. Raids and curfews can do so much and no more. However, what about targeting the root cause? Going to communities, yes, does work. However, what about tracing the guns? Most of the guns that enter the country are from USA, some are from Haiti. Haiti is in the CARICOM, just like Jamaica. I've never really heard of any working relation with the government in Haiti in terms of tracing these guns and in tracing where other illegal guns are coming from. So I'm wondering what does the government intend to do in this regard, as well as to also boost intelligence. A police officer or a soldier in uniform entering a community, nobody really chooses or wishes or is quick to talk. However, what about getting persons, training them properly and taking a page out of America's book, undercover, persons mingling, even befriending gangsters in terms of getting that intelligence so that cases can be brought before the courts and persons sent to prison.
Thank you so much, Rashawn. PM, just before you go, Abdul I'm trying to tie some of the issues as well. Abdul on Facebook has also asked, in relation to crime, why aren't we using more technology to help?
So, I would agree with you, as one Spanish Town man to the next, that because crime is such an urgent and clear and present danger that affects everyone personally, governments are forced to be reactive rather than strategic in response to crime. But it doesn't mean that government, and I'm speaking of my government or the previous government, that many of the things that you've suggested are not being done. There is a cooperation with Haiti. I don't want to go too much into details, but Jamaican policemen have been posted in Haiti. They have been posted in Miami. We do work with the American agencies, including the FBI and the ATF, in tracking weapons that come into Jamaica. We do undercover operations. We do gather intelligence. The question is, how effective have we been? So once you start to ask these questions now about if we're doing them, why aren't we getting results? So then the question becomes effectiveness and efficiency. Effectiveness is, are we using our resources to tackle the right problems? Are our resources geared towards our problems? And then the efficiency. how well are our resources working in solving the problems? After you have exhausted those two questions, then you go to the final and most important question. Are we implementing properly? And then you ask yourself, management and leadership. And that is really the challenge that we have with dealing with crime. It's a leadership issue and a management issue. That means you have to now look at the institutions. We rely heavily on two institutions in addressing the crime problem: the police force and the JDF. The public call has been that the Jamaica Constabulary Force is in need of reform so that it can better address the crime problem by aligning its resources to the actual problems, to become more efficient and more strategic. So the government, whilst dealing with all the other issues to address the immediacy of the problem, is also operating in a strategic way to get the proper leadership in place, the proper management in place to reform, transform, change, improve the implementation of our crime fighting strategies through the JCF. So that's one thing that we're doing. But crime fighting cannot just be limited to the police force and the JCF. Crime fighting is a whole of government undertaking. So believe it or not, the education system plays a great role in crime fighting. And we have to start to ensure that our schools are turning out Jamaicans who will be good citizens and not become prey or part of the crime problem. So a lot of work needs to be done there. Parenting is another issue. What are our families teaching our children as to how to resolve conflict? So the crime fighting plan and strategy of this government is not just relying on the police, and it is not just relying on the usual strategies that are employed in fighting crime. We are using other methods. We are expanding partnerships in crime fighting, and we are taking a whole of government approach. The results won't come overnight, but I am absolutely confident that the strategies that we are putting in place will yield the desired result. The government has to remain focused. The government has to be resolute. The government has to keep the public support. And the government has to find ways to provide the resources.
All right, we have another question from the room before we head back to social media.
Thank you so much. Mr. Prime Minister, Minister, Ambassador. My name is Aubrey Stewart, Jamaica House Fellow. So my question is, a lot of Jamaicans are concerned about the unity issue between the two political parties. And both parties having persons who are competent and also individuals who are incompetent. Are there any plans in the future that could see both political parties collaborating more and fusing together in solving Jamaica's issues once and for all?
I took government on a platform of partnership. Partnerships are absolutely important in modern governance. In our democracy, no one has absolute power or can act unilaterally. And even if you have the authority to act unilaterally, the nature of our democracy is that you have consultation and participation. So, I'm a firm believer in participatory democracy. So on the platform of partnership, we have many corporations with the civil society, the churches, the private sector. We collaborate. We have now put on board the Jamaica House fellow. We have now resumed the Vale Royal talks, which started back in the 2000s, which brought the two political parties together to discuss critical national issues and to come to some consensus. I've restarted that, and next month we will have our first meeting of the two political parties. So we are hoping that we can build a consensus on the way forward on critical national issues, which include some constitutional issues. But I'm also hoping that we could get consensus on policies, specifically on national security and on growth policies.
Prime Minister, we're going to have to speed this up a little because we know you have an appointment to go to. So we're going to ask you a series of questions from social media, and we want you just to give us very quick answers.
If possible.
If possible. So the first one is asking, so there's been a lot of conversation on social media over the last couple of months about Jamaica Customs. And Mark Byfield says, Dear PM, will there be a review of Jamaica Customs? As it is now, they are a great hindrance to doing business here.
I'm sorry, you said a review?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's a question I would reserve for the Ministry of Finance. It's directly under their purview. But I do know that there are plans presently being laid to improve their ICT infrastructure, which has been, I've received many complaints about that. So to make it more resilient and robust and to make it more efficient. I'm absolutely sure that there are plans afoot to improve their ICT infrastructure.
I think the particular concern a lot of persons have been having on social media relates to
Asikuda.
Not just Asikuda, but they perceive to be the arbitrariness of how customs, especially when small business persons are bringing in products from overseas, let's say they buy it on Amazon and so on. And that's a concern that has been on social media.
Right.
Yeah, I've had small business people complain to me about the issues at customs. But those are really policies that would have to be reviewed, not just by customs, but by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, having to do with our duty and valuation regime. And I think it has come to the level where those things would have to be reviewed. So my short answer is yes. There would have to be a review.
Okay.
All right, another question coming from Jason, talking about the informal economy. How are we going to get some of those haberdashery owners and operators downtown, I suppose that's downtown Kingston, to pay more taxes and their fair share?
You know, one of the reasons why we moved from direct to indirect taxes is that it is an easier tax to collect than having to go individually, specifically to collect from each point. We have seen an increase in our tax revenues, and you know, while it is not proven, but it is clear that the shift has resulted in greater collection in taxes. So the tax authority has improved its collection strategies. We're doing much more in terms of identifying the taxpayers and ensuring that they pay. There is more prosecution for not paying taxes going on. But there has also been greater public education about paying taxes. So I think that we're not doing too badly in that regard. We have made improvements, and the TAJ, I'm certain, will be continuing their drive for the improvement in tax collection.
May I just follow up? There's a Primo Jones who was getting into the discussion about customs, who's also tying that, and maybe you would want to just expand, really, asking a question, when are you going to align the Jamaican dollar with a currency that is recognized and that is known at every exchange facility? cheeky question, but I think it's something worth explaining for young people.
I'm not certain what the question is asking, but our policy is to have a flexible exchange rate. And I believe that over the last few months, our exchange rate has been behaving itself within the context of a flexible exchange rate.
All right.
There are some questions on the floor. I think Mr. Brooks, who does, what's the name of that show you do at 12 o'clock? Timeline on Nationwide, wants to ask a question. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
It's past 12.
It is. I missed the show. But, Mr. Prime Minister, you mentioned earlier about Mr. Spencer, who was trending for the last 2 days. I've been in a heated conversation with someone else just now about the same issue. And persons may want to hear you speak a little bit further on it. You said that there is more for you to do. Are there going to be personal implications for Mr. Spencer, given the injudicious comments that he made, which reflect negatively on your administration?
Well, as I said, I have not had a chance to speak with him, but I've heard some pronouncements that he has made expressing regret. I believe he has withdrawn the comment. When I say that I have to do more to reinforce not just to Minister Spencer, but to the political party and to the country as well, that the expectation that governments have to provide political largesse and reward to supporters, that the evolution of our politics cannot carry that with it. And I think I need to do more in that regard.
George.
Well, as I said, I have not yet had a chance to speak with Minister Spencer.
Let me go back to social media real quickly, but I think we have to wrap up in another 5 minutes. Georgia Peterkin is asking, what can be done, or what is the government doing to make healthcare and education way more affordable for all Jamaicans?
I think this Jamaica Labour Party government, has done more than any other government in making education accessible by implementing the free tuition policy at the secondary level. I think we have done significant work in improving the PATH program, moving the days in which PATH students get lunch support from 3 days to 5. I think in healthcare, we have done more in making healthcare accessible with our free access to healthcare in your time of need policy. And in terms of the management of the health portfolio under this administration, it is a marked difference than under the previous administration. The greatest challenge we have had, of course, is with the Cornwall Regional Hospital, a major challenge. But I think that the Minister of Health is doing an excellent job in managing a very difficult circumstance.
Prime Minister, we have to wrap up with you, but want to ask you probably a final question. I mean, we can continue the discussion, but the Prime Minister has to leave. Do you believe that enough focus is being placed, I think, by the government on strategies to adapt with our constantly changing global environment, reaching all generations? I don't know if I understand that.
I think that this government in particular has been very sensitive to the changing demographic and social profile of our population. And I think we have been the government that has reached out the most to the millennials, that has reached out the most and embraced social media and encouraged participation through social media. I think at the same time, we are the government that is, paying attention to the needs of the working class, to the pensioners, to the teachers, to the unemployed, to the unattached youth, to those people seeking to own their own homes or get titles for their properties. I think we have been a very responsive government.
Mr. Prime Minister, may I thank you for this, the first Twitter or social media town hall for the year. Certainly the engagement will continue. I know that you will make yourself available for future social media town halls. I know you do have an appointment that you have to run to. May I thank those
well,
on
it's not an
social media?
appointment, you know. We have Parliament.
We're also, I think the other two members can give us 10 more minutes.
No, they have Parliament as well.
They all are members of Parliament. So we want to thank you, sir. For those on social media who have questions that we haven't yet answered, we certainly, Prime Minister, will put those to you, and in future we can certainly provide answers to them. We appreciate everybody who has logged on, and for those who are here as well, the engagement continues. Thank you so much.
Let me close by saying thank you so much. We do appreciate your participation, and we look forward to more engagement on social media.
Please note that there are refreshments outside, so do not leave unless you get refreshed.